It is Combine Week here in Indianapolis, and the Lions are hard at work with the number 3 pick on the horizon. Hello and welcome to Road to the Draft Combine edition, presented by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers. I'm your host, Tori Petry. For the next 3 days, we will be coming to you from Indianapolis with midday shows covering press conference highlights and draft prospects. In today's show, we will talk about the quarterbacks and the wide receivers of the 2020 draft, and we will also take a look at everything head coach Matt Patricia and general manager Bob Quinn had to say this week. There is a lot to talk about, and we are excited to bring it to you. We start off today's show with the topic everyone is talking about when it comes to the Lions, the quarterback position. Do the Lions have legitimate interest in Tua Tagovailoa? Will Tua's draw entice other teams to trade up for that number 3 pick? We will discuss. Take a look at what the top quarterbacks had to say yesterday.
It's good. How you doing?
Hello, hello. You know, this process is all about talking ball and, you know, the physical stuff they can see on film, but everyone wants to get to know you as a person and as a player as far as the mental side. And I feel like I'm really good at that. I enjoy talking ball with coaches. So I've enjoyed the interviews so far. I'll play whoever for whoever drafts me. You know, I'm just not going to be presumptuous about, you know, what they want to do. It's the draft. You guys have been covering it for a long time. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah, of course I want to be the first pick. You know, that's every kid's dream. You know, I've worked really, really hard for this opportunity, and I'm blessed to be in this position. And a lot of people helped me get here. So I'm just really excited to be in this place. Yeah, I mean, you know, these measurements you can take so much from them. If it's a glaring issue on film with turnovers, yeah, it's probably an issue. But you know, I didn't have a lot of fumbles or anything like that, so I just tried to, you know, make a little joke out of it.
Mentally, it's been a grind. The rehab process has been a grind. You know, but it's nothing. It's not something that's new to me. I've dealt with my hand injury, my left ankle and my right ankle. You know, so I sort of know what to expect going through this process. But it's definitely been a grind. Yeah, you know, as a competitor, I want to be able to play. But you look at a lot of the guys that are really good and a lot of the greats. You know, they've been mentored, you know, by big time quarterbacks as well and veteran quarterbacks. So, you know, if the team needs me to go out there and start for them, I'll do that. But if they need me to sit behind someone and learn from them, man, I can't see what's wrong with that as well. You know, for me, whatever team decides to pick me, I'd be grateful. You know, whether it's first or 32nd or 200, I mean, I'd be grateful just to get picked.
It went good at the Senior Bowl. You know, obviously being under center is just something that, you know, I wasn't, you know, doing in my offense at college. But obviously it's something that, you know, I can do. It's not a problem. It's just something that I wasn't exposed to. But no, I had fun. I had a great week with the Lions staff. You know, there's some great coaches over there. They, you know, get me better all week. But the best thing I feel like was just being able to get in that offense and, you know, actually be able to learn NFL-style offense. I mean, it wasn't full playbook, but just be able to get a feel for it and know what I need to actually work on. You know, being in a huddle, calling the play, you know, the long verbiage and whatnot. And then definitely it's a little bit different than what I ran in college. So, oh yeah, I mean, Coach Patricia, he's a great coach. You know, I had a lot of fun out there with him. You know, so. I don't know what they were getting on about at practice, but I had a good time with them.
I want to be able to do my job and execute at a high level. I've always held myself to a high standard, and I've always been accountable for my actions, right? So having those things and just, you know, then they trying to be an asset for whoever it is.
Oh, it was awesome. Man, the Lions staff was great. Coach Bevel and Coach Sean Ryan got a chance to meet with them and work with them all week. And Coach Patricia's the man. Just being able to sit in on those meetings and see how they operate and get to know those guys and, you know, their types of personalities. It was fun to work with them. Kind of the same terminology we used with Coach Pep, Hamilton, my junior year at Michigan. So, yeah, I thought that was a smooth transition for me to go in there, and I learned it and I picked it up pretty fast.
A little bit of love for the Lions coaching staff from the Senior Bowl, from those quarterbacks there. Joining me now here on Radio Row at the Combine is Mike O'Hara from DetroitLions.com. Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, you didn't tell me you were going to talk about love, but let's go.
Of course. Well, those players coached or
Sure.
played with the Lions coaching staff as they coached the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Now we have moved on to Combine Week. Mike, the question that is on everyone's mind, do the Lions have legitimate interest in drafting a quarterback with the number 3 pick?
Oh, absolutely. I think they have it for a lot of reasons. Not just number 3 either, but a trade down or something like that in the later rounds. I could see as high as 2nd round, 3rd, 4th, 5th. They've got to fill out, the depth of that position. We saw that last year in the final, 8 games after Matthew Stafford went out. Well, if you're not ready at that position, you have no chance to win in the National Football League. And yeah, clearly they have more to do.
All right, it's impossible to talk about
Let's do it.
drafting a quarterback without discussing Matthew Stafford. Bob Quinn was adamant this week that there are no trade talks for Matthew Stafford. He said he'd add another exclamation point if he could, that those rumors were 100% false. What do you see for the future of
Just to
Matthew
bring your
Stafford?
people, just to bring your people out there up to date. When it first broke, he had a text message. He said 100% false, 2 extra points. Yesterday, he reiterated 100% false and said, and you can make it 3 extra points if you want. So right now, the fail is 3 extra points. But where there's a 3rd, there's a 4th, there's a 5th. There is no shortage of extra exclamation points. Okay, but right now, I don't think they're actively shopping Matthew Stafford. You know what? They don't have to, because with who's going to be on the board, teams are going to come to them. They don't have to go looking for it. And so if a deal will make itself if the Detroit Lions are interested in trading down to getting maybe Tua Tagovailoa or whoever at that 3rd pick. But like I said, they don't have to shop him. That thing will shop itself.
Well, let's talk about Tua and the possibility of what happens for the Lions with that number 3 pick. We'll take a look at the top 5 quarterbacks in this year's draft. According to Bucky Brooks, he's actually got Tua Tagovailoa at the 1st spot in his top 5, followed by Joe Burrow, and then Justin Herbert from Oregon, Jordan Love from Utah State, and Jacob Eason from Washington. Obviously, the one that we're going to talk about a lot is Tua Tagovailoa, because in your mind, Joe Burrow is probably that number 1 pick.
Oh yeah, well, Joe Burrow's number 1. If Tua was, I'm going to call him Tua. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, out there. If Tua was healthy, he'd be number 1 to me.
Right.
And I love the kid too. He's got everything. But Joe Burrow, look, 60 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. I looked at that and I thought, well, that's a pretty good career. Wait a minute, that's 15 games. And so, look, he just fits the Bengals at 1. He's from Southeast Ohio. He's a good kid. He grew up there, and that team needs him. They need that connection. But when we get to 2 at number 3, this is a special player, a special athlete, and he brings an awful lot to you. I mean, look what he did when he won a national championship, just coming off the bench for Alabama. Plays his second year, he throws 43 touchdown passes. Last year, humming along again, 33 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions when he went out in Game 9 with the hip injury. That's the issue. It's the hip. If he's healthy, I think he would be the 1st pick. We don't know that yet. There's a lot of hurdles to cross.
Well, a little bit of an update on that hip. Ian Rappaport tweeted today that after the testing here at the Combine, it looks like his hip is good to go. He's received a lot of positive reports. It says the MRIs are clean and there's no loss of blood flow there. So it says that he looks great. But another little update on that from Laura Rutledge says that the hip is healed for now, but there is a possibility later on in a month when he gets another scan that there could be some cartilage buildup that is sometimes expected from surgeries like his. So he will have another scan in a month to see where he is at. But for right now, he is looking pretty healthy. Now that obviously bodes well for the Lions if they were to take him with the number 3 pick, but it also adds a little bit of trade value there.
It adds value. Look, there's nothing bad about him being healthy. It's good. But when he talked to the media here on Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, he was pretty forthcoming with everything. He said, look, he feels fine now. He was at the medical check from 10 o'clock in the morning until 7:49.
It's a long day.
That's a long day. Even if he got a cold, it's a long day. Imagine what he was going through. But he said he's got another from his doctors on March 9th to get cleared. He said he's been doing some throwing, nothing too crazy, some throwing, and then he'll have his personal pro day on April 9th. So those are the dates you have to check off from what we know, what he's told us and what we know. And to me, the big one is April 9th. What does he do on the field when he works out for the Scouts?
What's the likelihood of the Lions going with Tua at number 3?
I'll tell you on April 9th. But but right now, I think that to me the priority would be to trade down, but not too far. I wouldn't want to go past Miami at number 5. I really wouldn't, because if you look at past drafts, the Pro Bowlers, the first team All-Pros are in the top 10 or 12 picks. They really are. Then you get into like the next, 13 to 24. There's maybe 3 or 4 of those guys will make a Pro Bowl. But the further you go down in the draft, it's obvious you get less talent. Now look, don't give me Tom Brady at 199. That's, you're dreaming if you think that's going to happen. It happens once every couple of decades, trust me. So to me, if I were the Detroit Lions and I wanted to shore up the defense, I wouldn't go down too far. But if you can mortgage that pick and really leverage that pick, then you can do some good things for your franchise. And what's wrong with having Matthew Stafford playing quarterback? Look, I'm a big Stafford fan, I admit it. But when he went out last year in Week 8 with that, and didn't come back, did not play or game 9, I should say, he was dialed into Darrell Bevel's offense. Tori. I mean, you saw it. We all saw it. He was just like a kid with a yo-yo. He did it in the string. He was just operating, man. And he was on his way to a 40-plus touchdown season. And maybe the Detroit Lions would have been a playoff contender. That's all conjecture. But what isn't conjecture is that is a terrific football player.
Well, you take a look at what Tua said in that press conference. He said he's ready to play this year. He feels if he needed to play and contribute right away, but he's also okay with the prospect of sitting behind a guy and maybe learning for a little bit. Matthew Stafford wouldn't be a bad guy to learn from.
No, I certainly wouldn't. And he said that anybody, and also, by the way, he got rid of the notion that he only wanted to play for the Dallas Cowboys. He said, look, I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan. I've got 2 dogs named Dallas and Star. Good for him. You're not going to play for Dallas. But, look, look, all these statistics have been rattling off and all that, but there's other things you look for in a quarterback, especially when one you're going to draft this high. And Tua, and so did Joe Burrow. They check all the boxes. You're talking about great kids, guys that you want to bring into your program, and they're going to be part of your program. You're not going to come in and think they're taking it over. They're going to be part of your team with the emphasis on TEAM. There's no I in team. I just thought Tua just absolutely won the day. He really did.
Well, let's talk about those trade scenarios and what could happen in the first round of the draft. Obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals have the number 1 pick in the draft, followed by the Redskins. A lot of people think that's probably going to be Chase Young, and then you have the Lions at number 3, and then you have some possible trade scenarios that could come behind that. The Giants at number 4, the Dolphins at number 5, Chargers at 6, and then you have the Panthers at 7, and the Cardinals at pick number 8. Now, there are a few of those QB needy teams following the Lions. Could they trade up to number 3 to maybe hop the Dolphins, because the Dolphins look like they should have some interest in Tua if the Lions don't draft him? What do you see playing out there?
Well, I don't know why they wouldn't have interest in any one of those quarterbacks based on what they had last year. But yeah, look, I think the Dolphins are the hot team, but 5, 6, and 7 are all looking for quarterbacks. And I think the Dolphins, with 3 first-round draft picks plus a high second-round pick that's part of the, a sweetener, they call it, a little sugar that you throw into the deal. I think, to me, they are the team that just looking on the outside, and look, I don't speak for them, they should be the team with the most assets to get a quarterback. And to me, if you need a quarterback and there's one there, then there's no price that's really too high, because you're going to have this kid for 15 years, maybe, who knows, for the length of his career, if he's that good, and he looks like he's that good. So to me, it's the Dolphins. But also, if they really want him, then go up to number 2. I mean, end all doubt, and say,
and then Chase Young
and just keep talking, and 1 second after he gets announced at number 2, Tua does, and Chase Young is a Detroit Lion, and whatever you want, okay?
Yes.
Here's your number, here's your position, go get the quarterback.
Right. Well, if the Dolphins are looking at Tua at pick number 5, do they really need to draft up if those teams ahead of them might not be after a quarterback?
Well, that's a great point, because the Washington Redskins aren't going to talk only to the Miami Dolphins. They're going to talk to the Chargers. They're going to talk to the quarterback-needy teams. The Detroit Lions are going to talk to other teams, too, or other teams are going to talk to the Detroit Lions. So if you want to make sure, then if you don't, then you go, well, I didn't really want Jordan Love, or I didn't really want Justin Herbert, or I didn't really want Jake Fromm, but I waited too long, and that's what I've got.
Yeah.
And I'm not downing them. I'm just using their names
Sure.
as an example. But you're getting down to serious business right now, and you don't want to outbid yourself or underbid yourself if that's the player you want. That's why I think when it all comes out, if there's a move made, I think it'll be by the Dolphins.
Well, you mentioned some of those other quarterbacks in the draft. Shockingly, it isn't just Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, even though those are the ones that we are talking about the most. Who else in that quarterback position group sticks out to you in this draft?
You know, I like Justin Herbert. When I made some notes down here, I just like the progression his last 3 years. There, 15 touchdown passes, 29 touchdown passes, 32. I think you're seeing a player whose career was growing. Jordan Love, just the opposite. God, he was just interception prone in his last year in college. I thought he was good in 2018, not so good in 2019. It didn't show well, I don't think. You were at the Senior Bowl, I wasn't, but really didn't ring the bell there. Kid I like just interests me probably more than, I got a different Jake than Bucky Brooks. I got Jake Fromm out of Georgia. One thing I liked about him was when he took over, he played one game that he started, played 47 games and started 46. Once this kid got the job, he didn't give it up. In fact, 2 good quarterbacks transferred out of Georgia to go play somewhere else. So I just think that to me, that just means something. He's not the greatest athlete, but I think he's got pocket presence, pocket awareness. I watched a little bit of video on him, and I don't think he's a walk-in starter necessarily for a team, but I think in the right system, I think he's a kid who can manage a game at a very, very high level. More than a game manager, I'd say a game manager plus.
Well, it's entirely possible if the Lions don't take a quarterback in the first round, they could be interested in one later on in the draft. Now, we still have more to get to in today's show. We will talk about the wide receivers as well as the press conference highlights from the coach and the GM. But first, we'll get to a break.
It's as simple as following your playbook.
It's the highly anticipated return of record-breaking global superstar Justin Bieber. Can we be friends? Changes tour. Is it too late? Ford Field, Saturday, August 29th. With special guests, Kehlani and Jaden Smith. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. The brand new album Changes is available everywhere now. Stay up to date at JustinBieberMusic.com. Presented by T-Mobile.
Welcome back to Road to the Draft Combine Edition, presented by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers. I'm Tori Petry. We are discussing the press conferences from the first day at the Combine. We already talked about the quarterbacks, and now we move on to the wide receivers. Probably not a position that piques the Lions' interest at the number 3 pick, but still a deep and interesting position nonetheless. Here's what the top wide receivers had to say yesterday.
This class this year is honestly unbelievable in my eyes. You can't really go wrong with anybody in whoever you draft, first, second, third, or fourth round. It doesn't matter, seventh. You're gonna get a great pick. And I was kind of like I said, me and the guys, we were just talking about it yesterday. Like we're real deep in this wide receiver class.
I feel like I'm the number one guy, you know. I feel like I can go onto a team and just immediately impact that team, you know, help that team get to a Super Bowl. You know, I feel like I'm going to bring that positive energy to the locker room, you know. And obviously, I'm a tall receiver, and I'm going to win at 50-50 ball, 80-20 my way.
It's actually exciting, having that dream as a young boy, just, you know, making it to this point of life, and just seeing that I have a bright future in the next level. It's crazy and it's amazing. Just because just like I said, I'm versatile, so I'm able to go downfield on slot or outside. So just being able to play those different positions and being able to, you know, go down the field and make those big plays.
Like I tell them, you're gonna get a consistent player. You're gonna get somebody that's gonna give you the same effort, the same production each week. You're definitely gonna get a physical player, and also my route running and ball skills, you know, is off the charts. I feel like I'm one of the best in this draft, so that ball's gonna get caught when it come my way. I feel like it was like at Ohio State with Coach Meyer. You know, he had that same mentality. I could tell he has a culture on his team that he's trying to embrace. But he definitely was a straightforward, hard-nosed coach, and that's what I'm used to. So I feel like I adapted well with it.
He's a funny guy, awesome coach. I liked him a lot. I think he was really cool with the players. You know, he wasn't he wasn't too hard on us. He's pretty understanding in terms of what we were going through. You know, but he expected a lot, and that was good. That's what I want from a coach.
It was good. I mean, it was new. I mean, it's all fast. So they do everything fast. I mean, so it was different. I had to adjust to it, but it was good. He's a great coach. I mean, I had a few conversations with him. It went well, and he's a great coach.
That would mean everything. The Lions, you know, growing up from there, going to Michigan, you know, maybe if I went to Detroit, that would be everything. You know, I love the Lions, love everything about the Lions.
Well, I know there are a lot of Michigan fans out there who wouldn't mind seeing Donovan Peoples-Jones come back to Detroit. Tim, let's talk about this wide receiver group. Atop of Bucky Brooks' list is, of course, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. That's where the conversation starts with the wide receivers.
Yeah, those guys are really, really talented. And just this whole class in general, it's really an amazing class. It might be the best wide receiver class ever here at the Combine, ever in a draft. One of the guys I really respect, one of the national guys, the draft analyst, Daniel Jeremiah, said he gave 27 wide receivers a grade of either first round, second round, or third round. That's pretty amazing. When you think that on average, you know, maybe 35 receivers get drafted, 27 have grades 1, 2, and 3. So this is going to be a draft where you can get a receiver, an impact guy, into day 2, and I think even into day 3, in the 4th, 5th round, we're going to see guys that in normal years, if this class isn't loaded, they're day 2 picks, and they're going to be guys that can come in and play right away and make an impact. So, look, if you're a team that needs a pass catcher, this is certainly a good time to be one of those teams.
Well, Bob Quinn, in his press conference, which we will discuss in just a little bit, he said that the wide receiver group was one of the position groups that stuck out to him as the deepest in this draft. Obviously lines up with what Daniel Jeremiah had to say as well. The Lions, on the other hand, probably not looking for a wide receiver at the number 3 pick, but it could be something that interests them on day 2, day 3.
Well, definitely. I mean, they re-signed Danny Amendola on Monday, and so they returned their top 3 wide receivers with Galladay, Marvin Jones Jr., and Amendola. I mean, that's 189 catches, over 2,000 yards, and 21 touchdowns. That's a lot of production, but what you have to think about is all 3 of those guys, none of them are signed beyond next year. Now, I'm sure Kenny Galladay and the Lions are going to have some conversations before the season gets started, but Marvin Jones Jr., 30 years old next month. Danny Amendola turns 35 in November. And so I think at some point you've got to start thinking long-term at the wide receiver position. Who do you want to match with Kenny Galladay? And so I certainly think round 2, round 3, the Lions are in a terrific spot with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. If one of these guys, I expect Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs to be in the 1st round. But if you now are at number 3 in the 2nd round, and some of these guys like Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, Laviska Shenault, T. Higgins, Jalen Reagor, KJ Hill. I mean, the names go on and on and on, and you're going to be in a terrific spot, I think, sitting there in the 2nd and 3rd rounds to snag one of these really good wide receivers, and I think some of these guys can come in and help them right away. And it's a great situation for a young guy to be in, too, because you're not going to somewhere where you have to be the guy. I mean, really, you're the 4th guy. And so you can come in, you can be a situational guy, you can learn from guys that have been doing it at a really high level for a long time. And so I think it's a perfect situation for one of these young receivers to come to Detroit. You get to learn, you'll fit in there situationally, and then now you're off and running when and if this team decides to get younger at the position moving forward.
Sure. Well, we're talking about the players that spoke on Tuesday, the first day of the Combine. Obviously, we've talked about quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends spoke yesterday as well, but with the selection of TJ Hawkinson with the 8th pick in the 2019 draft, tight end is probably not at the top of the Lions wish list in 2020.
No, I don't think so. Obviously you have Jesse James too that they signed in free agency, and Bob Quinn said after the season that they've got to find a way to get him a little bit more involved than he was last year. And then look, Logan Thomas is a free agent, but I could see them certainly trying to re-sign Logan Thomas. I thought he fit in well there. So yeah, I don't see tight end as a huge need. Maybe if a guy fits the athletic traits later on in the draft, day 3, and he's at the top of your board, maybe you put a young guy in, but it's certainly not a priority after spending the number 8 overall pick last year on TJ Hawkinson.
Of course. Well, yesterday we also heard from head coach Matt Patricia and general manager Bob Quinn. The first day of the Combine is when we hear from those general managers and coaches. It's always an interesting conversation. So take a look at what those 2 guys had to say on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think the value of the number 3 pick is always very high. It doesn't matter what the prospect is or what the year is, right? I mean, it's always going to be, you know, year to year, 5 or 6 guys that are just like really, really top prospects that anybody taken from number 7 through number 20 would love to have. It's just all about the cost, right? It's all about the, you know, what would they give up to get there. So this year's a couple quarterbacks. There's a couple other positions that are, you know, in my opinion, are really good players too. That, you know, if I do get calls, it might not be for quarterback. It might be for another position. So I think I have to look at that too and see, you know, what the overall value of all those positions are. Because I'm not eliminating any position right now. It's something we're just trying to make our team better. And if that's taking the best player at number 3, it's great. If that's moving back and acquiring extra picks this year or, you know, in the future, that's something that you got to have to consider too. So everything's kind of on the table right now in terms of that. So I think as you look across the draft board, I think, you know, the wide receiver position's really deep. I think the running back position's really deep. Offensive line has some depth. The secondary has some depth. D-line has a couple guys that are really intriguing. The quarterback. So it's really across the board. It's pretty deep. Some might be a little bit more top heavy, but there's some positions that are really, I'd say, value positions that you could get in this 3rd, 4th, 5th round that maybe in years past would have to be a little higher. So there's a lot of names there, especially with the underclassmen that came out this year. There's obviously more and more underclassmen coming out every season. So that's something that we as a staff, I think our staff does a great job of that. We try to get ahead of those juniors. You can't really, when you visit the schools in the fall, it's really hard to get a lot of good information on those juniors because obviously the schools want to keep them. But we, you know, have our eyes open to watch those guys on film. So, you know, I credit to my staff, you know, with, you know, Kyle O'Brien, Lance Newmark, Dave Sears, and all the area scouts, especially like the Southeast. Like all those guys are in the SEC, the great majority of them. So, you know, our area scout in the Southeast is Scott Sika. He lives in Atlanta, and you know, he probably has more prospects to evaluate than the other guys, just based on where he lives and the schools that he goes to and what we expect about the information on the junior prospects when we kind of start meeting in December. Those guys haven't declared yet, but we have to have those names kind of on the ready because we know a great majority of them are going to declare come January. So it's really, I think it's a deep draft, and we'll dive into these guys a little bit more this week. I'm not going to get into my evaluation of all the quarterbacks at this stage. I think I'll keep that to myself, but I think there's a number of players at all the positions that are definitely worthy of the number 3 pick. So we'll take that as it comes and see kind of once we get into, I'd say, March and April and we get through free agency and kind of reassess where we are, we'll probably have a better feel what direction we want to go. But right now it's really early. We'll look at all those guys. It's a, you know, I think I said this a couple days ago that, you know, we're drafting at 3, so we have to look at everybody. We can't just concentrate on one or 2 positions. So we'll concentrate on all the positions, the best players in the draft, the best players in college football, and you know we're in February here, so we got 2 months to kind of really dive into it. Obviously, we've been watching them all year. We'll get into the combine here, and then pro days and the 30 visits and all those things. So there's just so much time between now and really when that decision has to make. But we're going to evaluate all the positions. Talked to Matthew a week or 2 ago, and he's feeling really good, training full, and he'll be full go for off-season program.
I would say in general with the draft, I think there's excitement. Yeah, I mean, I love to, you know, be in a situation where you feel you have different options. I would say you don't want to be, you know, picking in certain slots based on how the previous year went, but certainly moving forward and looking ahead, you know, you like the flexibility that gives you in a lot of different areas. You know, I think there's, you know, there's a lot of fun to that. I think in general with the interviews, all of them are a little bit different. I think it depends on kind of the information we're trying to find out on that particular player. Some schools or some relationships we might have at the schools where the kids play, we might have, you know, good information in one area, and maybe there's other stuff that we need to find out. So certainly, you know, we're trying to do the best we can in, you know, the time that we're allowed to get to know them, or at least start the conversation, or maybe check off some of the boxes, and then we'll follow it up with either trips to the school or when we have our visits back at our facility. So kind of that's why the totality of the entire process is what's important. And you know, we like to use all of that time right up until the draft, and even as we're going through the draft, to try to get as much information as possible. You know, excited about it, excited to see what it looks like, and obviously I think everyone's just trying to do everything they can to get better. And I think one of the things that's great about the combine is that you know, they're taking a look at it from the same standpoint. You know, how can we improve the information that's or the time or the schedule so that everybody gets as much as possible. So it'll be fun to watch. Yeah, I think it's a great shirt, right? I think it's just good. I appreciate that. Thanks, Dave. Thanks.
Some smiles from Matt Patricia there talking about his Detroit versus everybody shirt. Gentlemen, Mike O'Hara and Tim Twentyman are joining me now on Radio Row. Guys, what stuck out from that talk with Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn?
Well, you know, I love the Combine because you get those sessions too. And actually before Bob Quinn did his podium with the national media, he got with some of the beat guys to talk about Matthew Stafford and Darius Slay, two topics. We have all options are on the table, that being trading Darius Slay, that be having Darius Slay play out the final year of his contract, or signing Darius Slay to an extension. And look, I mean, Darius has made it very well known that he wants to be the highest paid cornerback in the league. That's upwards of $15 million. So, look, Kenny Golladay, like we talked about, he's going to be coming due.
Sure.
You're going to have to pay a top 3 pick probably. There's some other bills to pay. And so I think it's just the due diligence by the general manager to have all the options on the table, see what he can get for Darius, explore every option. And so I think it'll be interesting over the course of the next month or not to see if Darius Slay is a Lion moving forward.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting when he said they really weren't looking to trade Darius Slay. And all, but wait a minute, we're in the showroom, you're looking for a car, right? Okay, the way it is. And also just more on the Stafford thing too. I just thought you kind of doubled back on that. In addition to the third exclamation point, he said that when the story first came out, that they called Stafford at home and said, "Look, this is not coming from us. Just want you to know we're not trying to trade you." And they also, according to both Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, Stafford said he's not asking to be traded either. So I think it kind of cleared up a couple of loose ends there.
Yeah, that was the big one.
Well, when he's saying openly that discussions have been had about trading Darius Slay, but also saying openly discussions have not been had about trading Matthew Stafford, it kind of gives legitimacy to being open about those two topics.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, like I said, I think it's just doing your due diligence. Matthew Stafford's under contract for 3 more years. As Mike talked about earlier on, he was playing terrific last year. Bob Quinn said yesterday that he views a quarterback being in his prime at about age 28 to his early 30s. Matthew Stafford's 32 years old. So he's still in that prime category, according to Bob Quinn. He's got experience that you can bring in a rookie quarterback, and he can be all talented as anybody else. But you can't throw something at Matthew Stafford that he hasn't seen in 11 years playing this game at a very high level. And he's still playing it at a high level. And so I just think it reaffirms this organization and Bob Quinn are behind Matthew Stafford 100%. Matthew Stafford's on board, which Mike said I think is a good point. And now Darius Slay's a little bit different. You know, he's only got 1 year left on his contract. He's a cornerback. He's not a quarterback. You know, you win and lose in this game by the quarterback play. It's how it is. And so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, a couple of things just to add on to what Tim said. We've seen what life was like without Matthew Stafford last year. Anybody notice that?
We have.
0-8. Got that? Got it? 0-8?
I think we got it.
All you people out there want to call the talk shows, like, get rid of Stafford. Okay, you got it, okay? That's what happened when you got rid of him. Second thing with the Slay thing, and I thought it was interesting, I think we all did, was that Bob Quinn brought up the name of his agent, Drew Rosenhaus. He says, look, Drew Rosenhaus has other players on our team. He's got team players. He's an agent. He's got players on every team in the National Football League. When he's talking about those players, he can also talk about Slay. So really, he's doing some of the work too for you, and then maybe presenting the offer. That number one, he's got to sell it to his player, and then he's got to sell it to the Detroit Lions. So there's a lot going on there that really could result in getting Darius Slay out of Detroit.
Well, on the Stafford topic, you guys heard it in that highlight from those press conferences. Bob Quinn said that he expects Matthew Stafford will be full go when players return. Of course, that's what we heard from Stafford at the end of the season. Some time has passed now, but that is still the case that Stafford will return to the offseason program full go, healed from everything that happened in 2019.
Yeah, good news because, you know, obviously going into your second season under Darrell Bevell, you kind of want to hit the ground running. You want to start getting into some of the little nuances that he didn't get into when you were just learning the playbook and how to call a play. And so I think it's really important that Matthew's healthy. He's said all along that he's not worried about it. He's going to be healthy. This just kind of reaffirms it. But I think it's important for the organization to kind of take a big step in that offense, to take a big step in year 2, that you have your quarterback under center and he's ready to roll.
And obviously Matthew Stafford was watching the games last year, and what you saw in the last 2-3 games is what that offense looks like with a healthy Kerryon Johnson, and then Bo Scarborough is the second or third or 2A or 3B or whatever you want to call him, runner in that offense. And I think that's given him you can see some of the things that he's been missing for 10 years in his career that they might be able to have with a running game going into next season.
Well, that is the perfect transition, because I was just about to mention that running backs and offensive linemen spoke this morning here at the Combine, and on tomorrow's show, we will discuss those two position groups as we continue to dive into the Combine prospects here in Indianapolis.
Now, don't forget the place kickers and punters as well.
I'm sorry. Very important.
You know, these are important people, too.
They very much so are. We will talk about all of that tomorrow on the show. We thank you guys so much for tuning in to Road to the Draft Combine edition presented by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers, and we will see you back here tomorrow.